this over. I tell you what, when I move it over, you'll know that's when you come. That's right. Exactly. Sure. Thank you. Mike's on. Good morning and good Shabbat, everyone. We begin on page 101 with the preliminary service. I wasn't facing the mic. You hear me now? Lauren?
You're not facing the mic.
There you go. Matavu ha'elecha Yaakov Mishkanotecha Yisrael. We turn to page 103. We rise for the blessings for a new day. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sachvivina l'achvim yom ve'in laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish harumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rakar tzalamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam amechim mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shesoli kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein le'oaf koach. Baruch atah Adonai. U'tanei hayom v'chol yom l'chaim chesed harachamim b'einecha v'nei chol ra'inu v'tigmaleinu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim li'amo Yisrael. We turn to page 112. Hagiki Yashar Adonai Tzuri V'lo Apla Sabo. Page 120. Mizmor Shir Chanukat Habayit LeDavid. Anya Zamerecha Kavod V'lo Yidam Adonai Eloi Le'olam Odecha. We continue with the Mourner's Kaddish on page 121. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah. Be'alma divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chal beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kari v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam u'omeo maya. Yitborach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudusha b'riyachu li'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'necha mata da'amiran b'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shamaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. We turn to page 122 and we rise. Baruch she'amar v'hayolam. Yachid Chayil Melch V'Shabach Umpar Adei Ad Shemo Hagadol Baruch Atah Adonai Melch Mulal Batish Bachod. You may be seated. We continue on 123. Odu L'Adonai Kiru Vishmo. Ki gadol Adonai umelo mo b'norahu al kol Elohim ki kol Elohei ami malilim v'Adonai shamayim asa od v'hadar lefanav. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu la'adam raglav kadoshu. Romamu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu la'ar kadsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu v'hu rachum yechapera v'lo yashchid. We're near the bottom on page 125. El Nekamot Adonai, El Nekamot Ophia, Hi Nasei Shofet Aretz, Hashev Gumal Geim. 126. Adonai Tzvot Ashrei Adam Bateach Bach, Adonai Oshia, HaMelech Yaneinu V'yom Koreinu, Oshia et Amecha. Ashrayim shekachalo Ashrayim shadonai Eloha v'ani b'chazdecha b'takti ageli b'vishuatecha ashir al Adonai ki gamal aloi. We turn to page 128 and we read responsively in the top part of the page. I bless Adonai at all times. Praise of God is ever on my lips. I exult in Adonai. Join me in glorifying Adonai. Let us together acclaim God's name. Those who look to God become radiant. Their faces will never be darkened with shame. The angel of Adonai encamps around those who revere God, protecting them. Revere Adonai, holy people, for those who revere God experience no lack. Come, children, listen to me. I will teach you to revere Adonai. Guard your tongue from evil, your lips from speaking deceit. We turn to page 135. Yichavod Adonai le'olam yismach Adonai Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai Uraflim yichaper avon v'lo yashli v'yavol shiva po v'lo yirakach hamato Adonai Ashia melchanenu v'yom koreinu. 136. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha Od Yehalalu Chasela Ashrei Shekach Alo Ashrei Shekach. Tehilat Adonai Yedaber Pi V'Vorech Kol Basar Shem Kadsho Li'Olam Va'ed V'Anachnu Nevorech Yah Me'ata V'Yad Olam. Hallelujah. We turn to page 141. Hallelujah, Halu El B'Kadsho. Hallelujah. Halu B'Tzitzalei Shema. Halu B'Tzitzalei Trua. Kol An Shemat Aliyah. Hallelujah. Kol An Shemat Aliyah. Hallelujah. Baruch Adonai Le'olam Amen V'Amen. Baruch Adonai Metzion Shochem Yisrael. U'Baruch Shem Kavodo Le'olam V'Yimalech. Kavodo et Kol Haaretz. Amen V'Amen. 142. We rise. Vayvarech David et Adonai le'enei kol hakol. Vayomer David Baruch atah Atahu Adonai v'adech Atahu Adonai Elohim asher b'charta v'Avram ve'yotzei Torah kasdim v'samto shema Avraham u'matzatat levava neman lefanecha v'charoti mo. V'hayom b'kata livneim v'yavru b'toch hayom v'yabasha v'yetrot feim nishlachta b'tzalot kamo even b'mayim azim. 143. Yoshadonai Vayar Yisrael Ayar Agdola Me'al Safat Hayam V'yar Yisrael Ayar Agdola Asher Asadonai Mitzrayim Ramat Adonai V'yami Adonai Et Adonai V'yaminu V'Adonai Moshe Abdo Oz Yashir Moshe Ubnei Yisrael. Mincha. Ki Adonai Melchama Shel Bagayim V'Oli Moshim B'Artzion Lishpot Et Arshavai Tol Adonai Melchava Yadonai L'Melech Al Kol Ha'aretz Vayom Adonai Echad Ushmo Echad. 145. Nishmat Kol Chai Tvarech Et Shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. האל בתעצמות עוזך, הגדול בכבוד שמך, הגיבור לנצח ונורא בנורתך, המלך הישב על כיסא רם ונישא. This concludes the preliminary service, and we begin on page 147 with Shofei Nod. Please be seated. Ready?
Shofei Nod Marom Vekadosh Shemo B'fi Sharim Titera U'divrei Tzadikim Titbarach U'b'shem Chasidim Titramam U'kerev Kadoshim Titkadash U'makalot Rivevot Amcha Beit Yisrael Lehadot, le'alel, le'shabech, le'fa'er, le'romein, le'ader, le'varech, le'alel, u'ka'ales. Al kol divrei Torah v'tishbechot, David ben Yishai, Avdecha Meshichecha.
We continue on the top of page 148.
Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu. Brachot ve'odot me'ata ve'adolam Baruch atah Adonai HaMelech Gadol v'tishbachot El ha'odot Adon ha'niflot Habocher b'shirei zimra Melech l'checha olamim.
Please rise.
Yigadol v'yigadah Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Belma divrach chirtei v'amlich machutei B'chayechon u'yomechon U'chayei b'chol Beit Yisrael Ba'gala U'bizman kariv V'yimeru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Li'olam li'olmei olmaya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yikar V'yishomon V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalel Shemei Dekudishah Beruchu Le'olam Mikol Berchata V'shirata Tishbemechata V'nechemata Damiran Be'alma V'yimeru Amen.
Page 149.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Please be seated. We continue at the top of page 150.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Yotzer or uvarecha Shech osei shalom Uvarei et hakol Hakol yodicha Ve'akol yezivchucha Ve'akol yomru Ein kodesh k'Adonai. Ein kerkecha Adonai Eloheinu b'olam hazeh Ve'ein zu'atecha malkeinu v'cha'ei ha'olam haba Efes b'yotecha goreinu limot hamashiach Ve'ein domelecha Moshiinu l'titzchiyat hametim.
Turn to page 151. El Adon al kol hamasim Baruch Baruch B'fi kol neshama God lo v'tuva malei alam Da'atu funa sova v'imoto Hamid Gael Chayot HaKodesh V'nedor v'chavod al hamerkava Zechlutu mishor lifnei chiso Chesed v'rachamim lifnei chavodo. Tovim me'orot shebara Eloheinu yitzaram b'dad b'vina uvaskel. Koach ugvura natan bahem liot boshlim b'kerev tevel. Malayim ziv umfikim noga na'ezivam v'chol ha'olam. Samechim b'tzeitam v'sasim b'voam osim b'yem aratzon konam. Be'er v'chavod na'otnim lishmo tzalavarin na'lezecher malchuto. Kara l'Hashem eshva yizrachor ra v'hitkin surat avana. Shevach notnim lo kol tzava maram. Tiferet ugadula serafim ve'ofanim v'chayot hakodesh. We continue on page 152.
Le'el asher shavat mikol ha'ma'asim. Titbarach Mosheinu ashavat maseh yadecha ve'amrei orsh yasita yefaru chasera.
153.
Titbarach soreinu malkeinu v'goleinu b'rei
Kulam avim, kulam berurim, kulam giborim. V'chulam osim ema, u'v'yira ratzon konam, v'chulam potchim et pihem, b'kedushav Torah, b'shirav zimra, u'mvorchim u'mshavchim u'mfarim, u'maritzim u'makdishim u'mamlichim.
Et Shem ha'el ha'melech ha'gadol ha'gibor v'hanora kadosh hu.
V'chulam makablim.
V'safav v'rav mino kedosha kulam ke'echad onim ve'omrim be'ira.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech ha'aretz kevodo.
V'ha'ofanim v'chayot ha'kodesh barash gadol min hashayim limot shvarim v'mitam mishabchim ve'omrim.
Baruch kavod Adonai min komo.
Le'el baruch nimo ditenu. Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir. Venizke kulanu mehera le'oro. Venizke kulanu mehera le'oro. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hameorot.
Top of page 154. Ava Rabba Avtanu Adonai Eloheinu. Where's that from? V'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz v'tolichenu koma miyut le'artzenu ki el po'el Yeshuot ata uvanu v'acharta mikolam ve'lashan V'kerabtanu l'shimcha hagadol Selah, Selah, Be'emet, Lahodot Lecha, Uyachecha, Uyachecha, Be'ava, Baruch Atah Adonai, Abocher B'yamo Yisrael, B'yava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, b'chol levavecha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol me'odecha, v'hayu hadavarim ha'eleh, asher anochi mitzavcha, hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, v'shivtecha b'beitecha, u'lechtecha b'derech, u'shaftecha u'kumecha, u'kshartam liot al yadecha, v'hayu l'tatafot b'einecha, u'ftavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'b'sharecha. We continue individually on page 156. Adonai Elohechem Emet.
Emet. Yes, even L'dor v'dor hu kayam u'shmo kayam v'chisanu chonin malchuto v'minato la'ad kayamed. Emeshata Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu, Malkeinu Melech Avotenu, Go'aleinu Go'Avotenu, Yotzreinu Tzur Yeshuatenu, Bodenu Umatzilenu Me'elam Shemecha, Ein Elohim Zulatecha, Ezrat Avotenu Atahu Me'olam. Kilo liel elyon baruchum baruch Moshe b'nei Yisrael lechanu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam micha mocha bo'elim Adonai micha mocha nedor b'kodesh no ratihilot osei fele shira chadasha shibachuga ulim L'shem falsafat hayam, yachad kulam haduvim l'chu v'yamru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Please rise.
Tzur Yisrael, Kuma b'Yizrat Yisrael, Uvdei kinecha, Yehuda b'Yisrael, Go aleinu, Adonai Tzivot Shemo, Kadosh Yisrael.
Baruch Gal Yisrael. On page 159, we continue together on 159 with the Shabbat morning Amidah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzhak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor, HaNara, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zecher Chasdei Avot, U'mevi Guel B'nei B'neihem, L'man Shemel B'Yahava. Melech Ozer Faked Mashiach Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham, Mufaked Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayim Etim Atah Rav Le'Yoshiach, Mashiv HaRuach, Hamarid HaGashem,
Mechakel Chayim B'Chesed, Mechayei Meitim B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umidam Elach, Melech Memitu B'chayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua.
Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei Hamet.
Nekadesh et Shimcha ba'olam, Kishem shemakti shimoto bishmei maram, Kakatuv al yad neviyecha, V'kara zeh el zeh, V'yamar kadosh. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Meloch ha'aretz kevodo, Hazbekol, Rash Gadol, Adir v'chazak, Mashmim kol, Midnasim, Liumat Serafim, Liumatam Baruch Yomeru, Baruch Kavod Adonai Mim Komo. Mim Komo Kenu. Mim Kom Chamal Kenu Tofia, V'tim Loch Aleinu Ki Mechakim Anachnu Loch. Matai Timloch B'Tzion, B'Kara V'Yameinu Le'olam Va'ed Tishkon, Titkadal V'Titkadash B'Tok Yerushalayim Ircha, L'Dor V'Ador, U'Netzach Netzachim, V'Yeneinu Tirena, Tirena Malchutecha, Kadavar ha'amor, B'shirei uzecha, V'yeneinu kirena, Tirena malchutecha, Kadavar ha'amor, B'shirei uzecha, Al yedei David, Mashiach tzidkecha. Yimloch Adonai le'olam Elohai Tzion l'dor v'ador, Hallelujah, l'dor v'ador nagid gadlecha, U'netzach netzachim kedushat cha nakdish, V'shivcha chaleinu mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed, Ki al melkado v'kadosh ata baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. We continue with the Kaddish Shalem on page 167. Yikara v'yikara shemei Rabbah ve'elma dirak yirutei v'yabnech pachutei v'chayachanav yamecha v'chayachal beit Yisrael b'agalav zman karivi yimeru Amen. Yeshmei Rabbah mevorach li'olam u'ol me'el maya yitbarach Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudusha b'richu li'elamin kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran b'yalma v'yimeru Amen. Tikabal tzalota nevata nechal Yisrael kadam avahandi v'shmaya v'yimeru Amen. Yesh Shlomo Rabbah min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru Amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru Amen. We're finished.
Ein kamocha v'ya Elohim Adonai Ve'ein k'ma'asecha Malchutecha malchut kol olamim U'memshaltecha bechol dor v'ador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai oz le'amo yitain Adonai yavarech et amo v'shalom avarachamim hetiv avirtzona Sion Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim Ki lecha levad batachnu Melech el Ram v'nisa Adon olamim Vayahi Bin Soharon Vayomer Moshe Kuma Adonai Ve'afutsu oivecha Ve'anusu mesanecha Mipanecha Ki mitzion Te'seh Torah Ki Baruch Shemai Adonai Olam.
Be'ana rachetz Velishma Kadisha Yakira Ana Emar Tushbechan Yehera Kadama Detiv Tachli Be'oraita Vetashli Mishali Deli.
The reading will begin on page 86, chapter 16, verse 1.
Azor, Yagin, V'Yoshia, L'chol HaChosim Bo, V'Namar, Amen. HaKol, Horugo Del Eloheinu, Unu Chavod LaTorah, Ein Kohen Krav, Ya'amod. Gudel Nachman ben Arya Leib, Binkom Kohen, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Liamo Yisrael B'Kedushato,
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam. Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ho'amim. V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Ato Adonai, Notain HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. V'sarai eshet Avram lo yalada lo v'lah shivcha mitzrit ushema Hagar v'tomer Sarai el Avram hinena atzarani Adonai miledet bona el shivchati ulai ibane mimenah וישמע אברהם, ממנה, וישמע אברהם, לכל שרי, ותיקח שרי אשת אברהם את הגר המצרית שפחתה, מקץ 10 שנים, לשבת אברהם בארץ כנען, ותיתן אותה לאברהם אישה, לא לאישה, ויבוא אל הגר ותהר, ותרא כי הרתה, ותקל גבירתה בעיניה, ותאמר שרי אל אברהם, חמסי עליך, אנוכי נתתי שפחתי בחיקך, ותרא כי הרעת ואקל בעיניה, ישפוט אדוני ביני וביניך.
Baruch Ato Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam notah b'tochenu. Baruch Ato Adonai notein haTorah.
Start there. It's okay. Yeah, but that's for us.
I mean, I can do one more line before she takes over.
Baruch Adonai and Baruch.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ameim v'natan lanu et Torah. Baruch Atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer Avram el Sarai, hine shifchatech beyadech, asi lach hatov be'enaich, vate'ana Sarai vativrach mipaneha.
Vayimsa malach Adonai el ein hamayim bamidbar al ha'ain b'derech shur vayomar Hagar shivchat Sarai emizev bat ve'enei tolechi v'tomar mipnei Sarai gevirti Anochi borachat, vayomer la malach Adonai, shuvi el gevirtech, v'hitani tachat yadeha.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chai olam notah b'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Vayomer.
Ya'amo Yoshua ben Michael v'Yonina Ashlishi.
Baruch Adonai HaBarak.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBarak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu michol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato.
Baruch atah Adonai, noten Torah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayomer lach malach Adonai arbe et zar'ech v'lo yisafer merov. Vayomer lach malach Adonai hinach hara v'yoladet ben. V'karat shemo Yishmael ki shama Adonai el onyech. V'hu yeh pere Adam yado v'kol v'yad kol bo ve'al penei chol echav yishkon v'tikra Shem Adonai hadover eleha ata el ro'i ki amra hagam halom Ra'iti acharei ro'i al kein kara lave'er be'er lachai ro'i hine ven kadesh uvein bared vateled hagar le'avram bein Vayikra Avram Shem Beno Asher Yalada Hagar Yishmael Ve'avram Ben Shmonim Shana V'Shesh Shanim Beledet Hagar Et Yishmael Le'Avram
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
The reading will continue on page 89, chapter 17, verse 1. Yamod Avraham Avi Ben Shmuel the Sara'ani Ha-Revi'i
Baruch et Adonai Baruch.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayehi Avram ben tish'im shana v'tisha shanim vayera Adonai el Avram vayomer elav ani el Shaddai hitalech lefanai Ve'yatamim ve'etna briti beni uvenecha ve'arbe orcha bim'od ma'od vayipol Avram al panav vayidaber ito Elohim le'mor ani hine briti itach v'hayita la'av hamon goyim v'lo yikarei od et shimcha Avram v'haya shimcha Avraham ki av hamon goyim nitaticha v'hifreiti odcha b'mod ma'od untaticha lagoyim umlachim mimcha yetzeu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam atah b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Tamod Malka Shena Bat
The stool keeps you off your tiptoes.
Le'atima HaChamishit
Baruch et Adonai Hambarach.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hambarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. V'hakimoti et briti beini uvenecha uvein zaracha acharecha l'doratam livrit olam liod lecha l'Elohim ul zaracha acharecha v'natati lecha ul zaracha acharecha et eretz megurecha et kol eretz Canaan la'achuzat olam v'hayiti lahem l'Elohim Vayomer Elohim el Avraham v'ata et briti tishmor ata v'zaracha acharecha l'doratam Zo briti asher tishmeru beini uveinechem uven zaracha acharecha himo lachem kol zachar unmaltem ed basar arlatchem V'haya la'o brid beini uvnechem uven shmonat yamim yimol lachem kol zachar l'doratechem yelid bayit umiknat kesef Kesef mikol ben nechar asher lo mizarachahu himo yelid beitcha umiknad kaspecha V'haita briti v'sarchem livrit olam v'avrel zachar asher lo yimol et basar arlato v'nichrata hanefesh hahu me'ameha et briti hefar vayomer Elohim el Avraham Sarai ishtacha lo tikra et shama Sarai ki Sarah shama uveirachti ota v'gam natati mimena lecha ben uveirachtiha V'haita lagoyim malchei ami mimena yiyu vayipol Avraham al panav vayitzchak vayomer belibo hal ben mea shana yivaled be'im Sarah havat tish'im shana teled.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
The sixth Aliyah reading can be found on page 92, verse 18.
Ahuva bat Avraham ba'ita.
Avraham v'ita hashishit.
Baruchu et Adonai hambarach.
Baruch
Adonai hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayomer Avraham el Elohim lu Yishmael yichya lefanecha. Vayomer Elohim aval Sarai ishtecha yoledet lecha ben vekarata et shemo Yitzchak v'hikamti et briti oto livrit olam lezaro acharav u'Yishmael Shmaticha hine barachti oto v'hifriti oto v'hirbati oto bim'od me'od shnei masar nesiim yolid untativ legoy gadol v'briti akim et Yitzchak אשר תלד לך שרה למועד הזה בשנה האחרת ויכל לדבר אותו והיה אלוהים איתו והיה אלוהים מעל אברהם ויקח אברהם את ישמעאל בנו ואת כל ילידי ביתו וכל מקנת כספו כל זכר באנשי בית אברהם וימל את בשר עלתם בעצם היום הזה כאשר דיבר אותו אלוהים אלוהים
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam notah b'tzolchenu, Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
The seventh Aliyah reading can be found at the top of page 93, verse 24.
Talmud. Shulami Rachel Bat. Chayesar Chaim Yosef HaShvi'it.
Baruchu et Adonai HaMvarach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ba'Avraham ben Tishim v'Tesha Shana Himolo Basar Arlato v'Yishmael beno ben Shalosh Esrei Shana v'Himolo et Basar Arlato v'Etzem Hayom Hazeh Nimol Avraham v'Yishmael beno v'Chol Anshe V'To Yalid Bayit Umiknat Kesef Me'et Ben Nechor Nimolu Ito.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natah b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
We will now do a Mishra Beira for those who are ailing. So, El Narafana Lo, El Mark Badelman, Helen Beavers, Ricky Beavers, Janice Berlin, Lee Bradley, Vicky Bradley, Brody Brayman, Donna Brigham, Beverly Cassius, Charlotte DeFlumar, Edward Goldberg, John Herrick, Bonnie Cabot, Inbal Priselli, Elaine Kruger, Dan Lawrence, Mark San Lazar, Alvin Malkin, Maddie Marshall, Mark Mathias, Jody Moore, Beth Newman, Luther Ott, Sharon Prager, Larry Robinson, Judy Schenberg, Darlene Shefsky, Brian Ziskind, Lauren Spiegel, Rachel Siegel-Strauss, Edna Weiner, Sarah Whaley, Larry Welk, Debbie Yingst, Aaron Ben-Brona, Chana Clara Bat Yona, Ita Yehudit Bat Shendel, Yitzhak Mordechai Ben Devora, Malka Bat Dora Bela, Rahaman Ben Sura, Sora Miriam Bat Shendel, Yaakov David Ben Devora, Yisrael Eliyahu Ben Leah.
וישבר עבדינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב, ימתנו שרה רבקה ורחל ולאה, יברך וירפא את החולים.
I agree.
Our
Kohem Shekeri Amra Akadosh Baruch Hu Yinaveh Rachamim Alehem V'chazikam Ulerafo Utam V'yishlach Lem Mera Refuah Shlema Min HaShamayim Refuat HaNefesh Urefuat HaGuf B'toch Sha'ar Cholim V'chazek Egedei Oskiv V'tzorcheichem Shabbat Hi Milzok Urefa'a Karova Lavo Hashta Bagalav Izman Kariv V'nomar Amen Elna Rifana Lanu Elna Rifana Lanu Elna Rifana Lanu Refuah Shelema
Yikadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah B'yama divrach Rute v'yamlich malchute V'chaye chon u'vyomei chon Uv'chaye dechol Beit Yisrael V'gala u'vizman kariv V'imaru Amen Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevarach Le'olam lo me'amaya Yidbarach v'yishtabach Yidbar v'yiramam v'yidnaseh v'yidhadar v'yidaleh v'yidhalal Shemei dekudashav b'rechu La'elav min kol berchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechamata Damiram b'yama V'imaru Amen. Now the Maftir Aliyah can be found page 93, verse 24.
Ya'amod Yehuda ben Shlomo Masha
Yehuda ben Shlomo Masha Hamaftir
Baruch Adonai Hambarach
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed
Baruch Adonai Baruch Le'olam Va'ed Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et Torato Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah
Amen. Avraham ben Tishim b'tesha shana v'himalo basar arlato v'yishmael bano ben shalosh esrei shana v'himalo et basar arlato v'etzem hayom hazeh nimol Avraham v'yishmael bano v'chol anshe v'eto yalid bayit u'miknat kesef me'et ben nechar nimalu ito.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chaye olam notah b'tocheinu Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah
Ta'amod Ya'amod Kalev David ben Ruvain Ta'amod Sanash Shalva Bag Abraham Sarah Hamagbiya v'Hagoleletz.
We rise for the lifting of the Torah.
Zot HaTorah Asher Sam Moshe Livnei Bnei Yisrael You may be seated. The Haftarah for Lech Lecha will be found on page 95.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzah b'divreihem hane'amarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah uv'Moshe abdo uv'Yisrael amo uv'nbiei ha'emet v'tzedek. Lama tomar Yaakov u'tdaber Yisrael Nistara darki me Adonai ume Elohai mishpati yavor. Halo yadata im lo shamata. Elohei olam Yisrael borei ketzot haaretz lo yiyaf lo yiga ein cheker litfunato noten la ya'ef koach u'enonim ansa yarbeh. Vayafo na'arim vayiga'u, ubachurim kashol yikashelu. V'koye Adonai yachalifu choach, ya'alu ever kancharim, yarutu v'lo yiga'u, yilchu v'lo yi'afu. Hacharishu elai im, Ul umim yachalifu choach yigshu az yidaberu yachdav lamishpat nikrava mi heir mi mizrach tzedek yikraehu l'raglav yitain lefanav goyim umlachim yarad yitain che'afar charbo kakashni daf kadsho Kashto Yerdefem Ya'avor Shalom Orath Beraglav Lo Yavo Mipa'al V'asa Kore Hadarot Merosh Ani Adonai Rishon V'elachronim Anihu Ra'u Im V'yira'u Ketzot Ha'aretz Yecheradu Karvu v'ye'etayun Ish el re'ehu ya'azoru Ulachiv yomar chazak Vaychazek larash et soref Machalik patish et hole pa'am Omer la devek ta'ovhu Vaychazeku b'masrim Lo yimot V'ata Yisrael avdi Yaakov asher becharticha Zera Abraham ohavi Asher hechezakticha Miktzot haaretz Umeatzlieha kiraticha V'amar lecha avdi ata Becharticha v'lo ma'asticha Hol tiraha ki imcha ani al tishta ki ani Elohecha imatzticha af azarticha af timachticha bimin tzidki hein yevoshu vayikalmu kol hanecharim ba'ach Iyu che'ayin v'yovdu anshe rivecha tivak shem v'lo timtzaim anshe matzutecha yehiyu che'ayin uchefes anshe milchamtecha ki ani Adonai Elohecha machazik yeminecha Ha'omer lecha Al tira ani azarticha Al tiri tola'at Yaakov mete Yisrael Ani azarticha ne'um Adonai V'go alech kadosh Yisrael Hine samticha lemorag charutz chadash ba'al pifiyot tadush harim v'tadok ugvaot kamot tasim tizreim beruach tisaim usara tafitz otam Beata tagil baronai Bikdosh Yisrael titalal Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Sor Kol Haolamim Tzadik B'chol Hadorot Ha'el HaNe'eman Ha'omer V'yoseh Ha'medaber B'kayim She'kol Davar Ra B'emet V'tzedek Ne'eman Atahu Adonai Eloheinu V'ne'emanim Devarecha V'davar Echad Midvarecha Achor Lo Yeshuv Rekam Ki El Melech Ne'eman V'rachaman Ata Baruch Ata Adonai Ha'el HaNe'eman B'chol Davarav Rachem Al Tzion Ki Hi Beit Chayenu V'la'alu Vat Nefesh Toshia B'imheira B'yameinu Baruch Ata Adonai V'samech Tzion B'baneha Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu B'Eliyahu Anavi Abdecha Uv'malchut Beit David Meshichecha B'imheira Yabo V'yagel Libenu Al Kiso Lo Yeshev Zar V'lo Yichalu Od Acherim Et Kavodo Ki V'shem Katshecha Nishbata Lo Shelo Yichvene Roli Olam Ba'ed Baruch Ata Adonai Magen David Al HaTorah V'al HaAvodah V'al HaNvi'im V'al Yom HaShabbat Hazeh Shenatata Lanu Adonai Eloheinu Likdusha V'limnucha Lechavod Ultifaret Al HaKol Adonai Eloheinu Anachnu Modim Lach Umvarchim Otach Yitbarach Shimcha B'fi Kol Chai Tamid Leolam Va'ed Baruch Ata Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Up next. Come on.
Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha, Odi Hallelujah, Selah, Ashrei Hamshakal Kala. Tehillah LaDavid, Aramim Kalhan. Tehillat Adonai Yedaber Pi, Vivarech Kol Basar Shem Kodsho Le'olam Va'ed, Ve'anachnu Nevarech Yah, Me'ata V'ad Olam, Hallelujah. We rise as the ark is open. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, Ki niskav Shemo Levado, Hodo al Eretz V'shamayim, Vayorem Kerem Le'amo, Tehillah Lechol Hasidav, Livnei Yisrael Am Karovo, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Mizmor LeDavid, Hallelujah.
pleasure to invite up to give a few words of wisdom of Torah, Professor Dr. Danielle Younowski.
Well, I'm going to take this off since I have been COVID tested. Yeah. I find I can't lecture with a mask on anyway. I'm not going to give you such a long lecture as I do for my poor students, so don't worry, but it's much more comfortable to have this off than on. Thank you. Okay, so this Parsha, going from the beginning, is one of, I find anyway, one of the most action-packed of all in terms of events and personalities, but also in terms of the themes that are raised. All of these things could be topics for long discussions and talks and writings, when you can certainly find those in the Midrash. The rabbis took a lot of time with it, as they do with so many things. And for most of us, I think we're most familiar with the very first words of the Parsha, which wasn't in our part today, but I'm sure you've heard them before. And I'll read them just very quickly in English. So the Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and curse him that curses you, and all the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you." And Avram went forth as the Lord had commanded him. So we know this passage I think, for many reasons. One of them is Debbie Friedman's song, right, which everybody knows and loves. Her tunes are always fun. But the passage itself, in many ways, really speaks to the birth of the Jewish people as an ethno-religious community, right? On the one hand, God is saying, believe me, do what I'm saying, go forth, right? A push. On the other hand, it's saying your descendants, right? Your descendants will be a blessing to the world. So it's both a religious community being created and a family-based, right, ethnic community, which is how we still, I think, see ourselves, although it's been a topic of great conversation for centuries. What are the Jews? Are we a nation? Are we a religion? Well, right here it says it's both of those things, right? An ethno-religious group. And I think that's why so many of us know those words. It's such a powerful moment of defining, really, who we're supposed to be according to our tradition. But there's much more in here, so many different things, all of which we could spend a lot of time talking about. And I'll just mention some of these things, which struck me as worthy of note when you read the entire Parsha. So I'll just say a few of these things. So, of course, it's the Parsha in which Avram and his family, including his nephew Lot, are called by God, and they go from Ur to Canaan. They build altars, but as soon as they really get to Canaan, they go to Egypt because there's a famine. And then they spend some time in Egypt. We'll talk about that again in a moment, what happens there. And then come back very quickly, right? This weird interlude in Egypt, and then they're back in the land of Canaan. And there's a series of wars, really the first wars in the Bible. And Avram and his family aren't really part of where the wars are, but because Lot gets captured, he intervenes and he proves himself a great battlefield general. You may know that story, and saves Lot. It's also an interesting interlude where he has this conversation with the king of Sodom, who he had allied with in these wars. The king of Sodom says, well, take some of the booty, and he says, I'm not going to touch anything, from you, right? So it's an interesting moment about his position toward this city of sin, Sodom, right? It's also in this portion, there are several different covenants. Yeah, there's a covenant, so-called covenant of pieces, where God says, okay, you're not sure if you believe me about this covenant, which I lay out right in those first words, but let's say lay it out again. And this time you get a bunch of animals, you cut some of them in half. So he does that, and then he falls asleep. It's a dream sequence, right? Avram falls asleep. God comes, you see, there's a pot, flaming, smoking pot and a torch, and God walks down the middle of the split animals in the dream, which is somehow a ritual confirmation of the covenant. Certainly it's hard to know what to make of that. And this is soon followed by the covenant of the flesh, where Avram, now Abraham, I think he's already now Abraham, or he is after this moment, where he is told by God, now you have to mark, right? I've done this in your dream. Now you have to mark the people physically with the covenant, and he circumcises all his household, all his slaves, himself and his son. This, of course, stands out to all the men here, as Avram is 99 years old and circumcises himself. Ouch. His son Ishmael is 13 and gets circumcised. That's not something we like to think about too much, I think. But this is not only a story full of action, right, and full of momentous, powerful, big moments. It's also a story with a lot of family moments that I think are very disturbing in a lot of ways. Not all of them, but quite a few of them. It's in this passage where Ishmael is conceived, right? And it's where Sarai, as she's still called at that moment, can't have children. She gives her maidservant, right, Hagar, to her husband. She conceives, but then there's tension, right, between Sarai and Hagar. Hagar is so badly treated, she runs out, and there God speaks to her. We know he speaks to her again later. Yes, we read about it every High Holy Days. Speaks to her later when she has the child dying in the desert. Yeah, terrifying moment. But here he already speaks to her, also comforts her. She calls God the God who sees me. It's a very interesting moment. So I don't know what to think about Sarah for her action. And of course, Avram himself does one of the most unforgivable things among several unforgivable things he does, from my perspective anyway, for whatever that's worth, in the Torah. When he goes down to Egypt, yeah, this wasn't, I think, in the part we read today, but it's in the parsha. When he goes down to Egypt, he's very concerned that Sarai is too good looking. And so people will kill him as her husband in order to take her. And so he says, let's just pretend you're my sister. That way they'll just take you and they won't kill me first, which is what happens, right? The Pharaoh sees her, takes her. The text implies very clearly he doesn't just platonically keep her in the palace, right? But then the plagues happen, foreshadowing what happens later. The plagues happen, and the Pharaoh realizes she's his wife and says, get out of here, you tricked me, go away. And then off they come back to Canaan. I don't know about you, but I find this a disturbing bit of activity from Avram. Maybe not as disturbing as when God tells him to sacrifice his son, and he gives no pushback. As a father, I find this the most disturbing moment almost in the entire Torah. He does have some, by the way, outside of this portion and what I'm saying, some positive aspects, right? He's brave. He leaves men in battle. He also will push back at God and try to save whoever might be righteous in Sodom, right, in the next chapter. So it's a mixed thing we see about him. But of course, as Jews, we don't look to these families of our past, our family, for perfection. We're not worshiping Abraham. Right? That's not what we do, right, in Judaism. Certainly it doesn't mean we throw everything out because these are not perfect people, but certainly those are all things worthy of speaking about at length, but I'm not going to. I'm just bringing them up to you as some of the things that strike me when I read this piece, but full of action. Going to Egypt, coming back, making altars, all kinds of covenants. There's also, by the way, I didn't even mention this, predictions. God, many times here, he's predicting Sarah's going to have a child, Hagar's going to have a child. He predicts the Egypt, your descendants are going to end up in Egypt for 400 years, and then they're going to raise all kinds of predictions and promises and covenants and war. Whew! I mean, it's quite a chapter. But for me, when I was reading it this time, I was thinking in much more personal terms, much more the terms of the family. These are also our ancestors. We are part, as Jews, of the history that follows from this family. And so let me look back again at those opening words and think about it as family and individuals and yourself and people you know. And the Lord said to Avram, "Go forth from your native land and from your father's house to the land that I will show you, and there I'll make of you a great nation and bless you, and your name will be great, and you shall be a blessing." Only by leaving everything behind, right? By cutting off everything about your past, rejecting your parents, rejecting your household, rejecting any cultural influence from your entire time of childhood. Go off into this journey and there find yourself. And in fact, there's a lot of discussion among the rabbis about what this go forth really means. And some say it actually means go forth to yourself. Go to yourself. Find yourself. So the only way to do that seems to suggest here, right, when we read this, total cutoff from the past and your family, your personal family, right? Leaving it all, nothing's left. And that's the only way to go and find yourself. Well, as a historian, right, I want to know what happened before this. Why Avram? How this moment came to pass, right? Why it happens this way. The rabbis, I think, were also interested in that. Like so many parts of the Torah where there is nothing. We have a tradition of stories that try to fill in the nothing with something. Yeah? And I think it's surprising almost to read the chapter 4 and realize there is no story of idols. There is no story, right, of him breaking idols. Do you remember this story? This is a midrash trying to fill in the absence. And they're saying his previous household was so bad and pagan. That's why he leaves. His father, goes the midrash, right, was a maker of idols. And one day he leaves the shop, leaves Avram in charge. Avram, who's disgusted by this worship of idols, destroys them, puts the club, whatever he uses to break them, in the hands of the one he doesn't break. You know this story, right? And then when his father comes back, he says, Avram, what's the story? And he says, oh, that idol broke all the other idols, right? Because this is a worship of nothing. And so this was an explanation the rabbis had. Why does he just break entirely from his past? Why does God want him to do that? Because it was terrible, right? It was pagan, it was heresy, an absolute break from the past. I find this idea distressing when you think about your own children. We were just up in Rochester visiting our daughter, Sarah, who many of you know. She's a junior. She's doing great. Many of you know her here. She had her naming here. She went to religious school here. She had her bat mitzvah here. She babysat many of the children of people in this audience, either directly or as an employee at the JCC and aftercare. So you all know her. And we went up there and we saw her, and she is becoming herself. She is on her journey. She has gone forth to herself. Isn't that what we all want? We want them to go off from here to, whether it's a physical place that's different, but certain, or at least a different place for themselves in spiritual terms and the way they understand the world, realizing who they are. We all want that for our children, don't we? I mean, we have children. My son is going to go off next year. We certainly hope. but you know, and certainly part of that journey is separation, right? Separation from the parents, from the home. Freud says you've got to kill off your parents. The rabbis seem to say the same thing right here. That makes me very upset. Is Sarah's only way to become the true Sarah to leave us totally behind, to break us like idols broken by Avram, to cut off her past completely? Is that what the Torah says about an individual's journey to themselves? It seems to be. The rabbis seem to say that. But I am a historian, and I want to know the evidence. What does the Torah actually say about Avram's past that led the rabbis to try to fill in the blank, right? And you turn to the end of Noach, the previous parsha, and this is all it says. Terach took his son Avram, his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Avram, and they set out together. They set out together from Ur of the Chaldeans for the land of Canaan. But when they had come so far as Haran, they settled there. The days of Terach came to 205, and Terach died in Haran. He didn't leave Ur after breaking the idols and cut off everything from his father. He started on the journey with his father. His father took him and set him on that journey. This isn't actually a break from his family. Do you see that? It is it's not just a continuation of his father either. They go part of the way together. I don't know why they stop in Haran. That was the intention of his father to go to Canaan, to take the whole family. He stops in Haran. Who knows why he stops in Haran? Maybe he's ill. He eventually passes away. And then Avram is told by God, go forth. But he's not saying, go forth, all that happened in Ur is what you're escaping. You could interpret this as go forth, continue in a way the intentions your father had for you. Don't stay in Haran, where your father always was and died, but find your own path. It's not a path of rejecting the father and the past. It's a path that unfolds, that doesn't reject necessarily all the values and ideals and hopes that we have for our children, but all of that becomes just part of who they are as they unfold from within on the journey that they embarked on, which does leave us behind, but not because we were idols that had to be broken. And so I read this after being very disturbed and thinking about my daughter, and I'm very comforted that I went ahead and went back one little bit in the Tanakh, and I can say now to my daughter, in accord with what the Torah seems to say to me, go forth and find yourself. That's what you need to do. But I know that you're also taking something of us with you, and that is how it should be. Lech lecha. Thank you.
Continue with Chapsi Kaddish on page 184. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah v'alma divra kirtei v'amlich malchutei v'chayei chanu yom uchayei dechol beit Yisrael Bagala, Bagala, Uvizman Kariv, Vimaru, Yehi Shmei Rabba Mavorach, Leolam Ulam Me'almaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yipar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitale, V'yithalal, Shemei Dekudesha, B'richu, La'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata, Tushbechata V'nechemata, Damiran B'yalma, V'imeru, Amen. Amidah, page 185. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei Hakol, V'zocher chasdei avot, u'mevi goel livnei v'nehem, l'man shemo v'yahava, melech ozer ufoked u'moshia u'magen. Baruch atah Adonai, magen Avraham, ufoked Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, mechaye metim atah rav lehoshia. Mashiv haruach u'marid hagashem, mechalkel chayim bechesed, mechaye metim berachamim rabim, somech noflim v'rofei cholim, u'matir asurim, u'mekayem emunato lishenei afar, Michamocha bal gevurot, umido melach, melech memid, umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'aman atal achayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye ha-metim. Naritzecha v'nakdishcha, kesod siach sarfei kodesh, hamakdishim shimcha b'kodesh, kakatuv al yad nevi'echa, v'kara ze'el ze'v'amar. Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Meloko haaretz kevodo. Kevodo malei olam, meshartav, shoalim zel lazeh, aye makom kevodo, leumatam, baruch yomeru. Baruch kavod Adonai mim komo hu yifein barachamim v'yachonam hamyachadim shemo erev avoker b'chol yom tamid pamayim b'ahava shema omrim. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, V'hu Yashmienu Barachamav Sheni, Le'enei Kol Chai, Li'yot Lachem Le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Uvdivrei kadshecha katuv le'mor. Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai of Tzion, L'dor vador, hallelujah. L'dor vador nagid, God lecha, U'lenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed, ki hamelech gadol v'kadosh atah, Baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh. Please continue with your own personal Amidah if you've not yet finished. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalmad divra kirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yamechon, u'v'chayedecho beit Yisrael, b'gala v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach, le'olam u'lam me'almaya, yitbarach, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudasha b'richu la'elam min kol berchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata damiran b'yalma v'imeru Amen. Tidkabal tzlot hon uvot hon d'chol Yisrael kadam avuhon d'vishmaya v'imeru Amen. Yehei shlam araba min shemaya V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru, Amen. Osei shalom v'imromav, hu yasei shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru, Amen. Ein k'Eloheinu, ein k'Adonenu, ein k'Malkeinu, ein k'Moshienu, Micheloheinu, Michadonenu, Michemalkeinu, Michemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Shehiktiru, Avotenu, Lefanecha Ketoret Hasamim. Yada da 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 da, yada da, yada da. Yada da da da. We rise for Aleinu, page 205. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום בהשבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ תחת אין עוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. In the coming week, we observe the yahrzeits of Mrs. Faye Katz, Ben Kittner, Miriam Shadur, Ben Lewis, Abraham Bensky, Maury Rawson, Fred Blaze, Bernard Siegler, Bayer Sachs, Aaron Joseph, Julius Maurice Israel, Ben Halpern, Herman Max Siegel, Elliot Kolker, Shirley Marcia Rosen. Those observing the yahrzeit and those in mourning. Mourner's Kaddish, page 207. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah. V'alma divra kirutei, v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon u'vyamechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mavorach le'olam u'lomei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei d'kudasha b'richu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlam rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Do we have someone making announcements? Alyssa?
Hi everyone, good Shabbos. Good to see everyone today. Thank you to everyone who assisted with services today. We really appreciate it very much. I know we have a ton of programs, but I can't keep them all in my head. Do you know what? Oh, thank you, Gio. Look at that. We have a movie coming up on next Sunday, October 24th, Deli Man, so be sure to check our website to get some information about that. And we've got on Thursdays, beginning in the end of October, 10/28, we've got a special Lunch and Learn program coming up as well. And we have a sisterhood program coming up on Tuesday. Let's make a mezuzah. This looks like a lot of fun. If you have any questions, ask Susan about that. And we have some birthdays. I thought Josh, okay, anyways, Josh Mintz is on the list. I think he already had a birthday, though. We've got Reva Zifskind, Amanda Cassius, Isaac Bendian, and also Abby Cassius, Lester Litt, Emerson Kleinman, Lizzie Mintz, Stephen Gross, Lee Schulman, Rochelle Lansky, Christine Scheinberg, Norma Belenke, and David Mann. More? Was I reading some anniversaries? Nope, those were all birthdays. Anniversaries on this list. You can tell I do this a whole lot. We've got Richard and Leslie Jason and James and Alka Cohen. Happy anniversary to y'all. Thank you. Anything else? Great.
We have a joint mic program with TI on Thursday at 7 p.m.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. If you'd like to attend, go to the website. What do you want me to repeat?
What she said.
Oh. This Thursday, a joint MICA and TI program. If you want more information, go to the website, sign up. Great. Okay, thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
I'd like to invite all upcoming bar and bat mitzvah students to join me for Adon Olam. Which chain you want?
Let's just do Adon.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Adon
Olam Asher Olam B'Terem Kol Yetzir Nivra Le'nasa B'Chepsel Kol Azar Melech Shemo Nikra Azar Melech Shemo Nikra Be'acharei Kilot HaKol Levado Yimod Nora Ve'hu Raya Ve'hu Hoveh Ve'hu Yiyeh B'Tifara Ve'hu Yiyeh B'Tifara Ve'hu Echad Ve'en Sheni L'han Shilo Ve'havira Ve'li Reshi Ve'li Tachli Ve'lo Ha'oz Ve'han Mitzra Ve'lo Ha'oz Ve'han Mitzra Ve'hu Eli Ve'chai Lo Eli Asur Eli Ve'etzara Ve'hu Nisi Umanosli Ve'nat Kosli Ve'yom Ekra Ve'nat Kosli Ve'yom Ekra Ve'ado Afki Rufi Ve'etisha Ve'ha'ira Ve'im Rufi Ve'viati Adonai li ve'lo ira Adonai li ve'lo ira. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Kiddush Club and a couple snacks in the community court.
It might, you know, the rabbi might have taken it in her office.
those could be void on this. We'll continue.
Well, there may be many. I only spent so much weeks there. Okay. They're all here.
I never see him walking anymore around the park. They all tell the story of Terah and the idols as if we were there almost.
It's not in the Torah. I mean, the rabbis, they make the story what doesn't say what's right, what was.
I love that.
What it actually
That may be part of it. Terrorists, thank you.